because you need to procure the land. We have a very interesting land tenure system. The land belongs to the individuals. So if you haven't procured the right land, and the land is not available, then you hire a contractor to deliver that project. And then you don't procure the land in time, the project is likely to delay.
Okay.
We have seen it in so many places. It happened in Northern Bypass. There are several roads that you find just an individual just refusing to sell just a section. Normally when you are seeing in Kampala where you see a road is complete, then you have a small section that is incomplete, because you find that individual has gone to court, is complaining and what. That's my land and what. The second issue that is what is the procurement issues. Because of our procurement law is so liberal. What happens is that with this procurement law is that if you are maybe 180% almost completing the procurement process, and a whistleblower comes in, you start all over the whole process. That procurement process has been delayed in most of the projects because of several delays on the side of government. Then but this shouldn't be a bigger issue. The issue of budgeting, we may overcommit to so many projects.
Okay.
So if you overcommit to so many projects, and you are an entity, for instance, UNRA, and it overcommits so many projects must deliver in a year, it will lead to a few delays. But at least on government side, that has been sorted out. Now on the private sector side, is that once you take on a contract, you shouldn't overcommit to the contracts you are taking on. Because we are seeing some private companies, they are taking over so many buildings, so they they get overcommitted and they don't have the capacity to deliver. So you need to assess yourself to know how much you're able to take on. Two, get the right. There are issues related to most contractors complain in terms of the right skills. This in the education side, the skills that we are bring out, they have to be retrained for them to be able to deliver on the projects they want. And this particularly the lower skills, it's not the engineers, the actual people who are laying the brick, who are mixing the sand, the right skills. So with big projects, you need the right people to be able to deliver this. So this needs to be put in place so that on the side of the contractor. Now lastly, on the side of constructors, and this mainly happens with indigenous Ugandan farms, is the issue of management. The biggest challenge we are seeing with our own companies.
That is with the private.
With the private, is that you get. I know when you are growing up, there are some companies we knew. Immediately the owner dies, the company disappears.
Quite many.
So many. So some of those things to make sure we sustain them going forward is very key, and something that we are, as government, we are trying to think about. How do we ensure the systems, the management systems and the systems are put in place for companies to outlive the owners.
Okay. And well, if you've been following up with situations coming in from the country, is that along the path, ever since they have started, commodity prices have been increasing, and this did not leave out the materials or the building materials prices that have as well soared, and it is actually worrying for those dealing in the construction and mainly real estate sector. We've seen increase of houses or rent and all that because people are trying to meet most of these particular costs. But if you look at the situation of such, when the building materials have increased, how should consumers consider the ongoing situation? Consumers, speaking of those who go and buy from the hardwares, let's say you're a contractor, you're an engineer, or you're actually intending to build your house or an arcade, but these prices are quite hard. Do you choose to bow out of the situation and wait till the prices go down? Which advice can be put on that particular situation?
Actually, the problems are different for the consumer and the constructor and the contractors. Because what happens is that the contractor, the problem is a little bit easier. Why is that if I'm going to build a house, the contractor will just tell me the price of cement. So it's not him. The cement doesn't affect him particularly, directly in his pocket.
Okay.
But indirectly it affects him because as me, the consumer, I suffer. What happens that the pace at which I would have built reduces.
True.
So meaning now where the contractor will suffer indirectly is that business coming to them is likely to reduce. Okay, because now what is happening is that this the issue of prices is not just on construction material, it's a general problem, and not only in Uganda, it is a global problem, and it keeps worsening every day because while people think it has been occasioned because of the Ukraine and Russia war, these prices were increasing even before. What was happening is that on one end we had the COVID locked out economies, and because economies locked out, it reduced the demand side of people demanding. So this depressed prices. The prices went so low. Now when economy started opening up, that means the demand people started demanding for commodities. The supply side has not responded as fast.
True.
Now that happened all the way to the gas line, the fuel prices at the global level. Now the supply hasn't been able to respond as fast as the demand is pushing for it to respond. So the outcome is high prices. Okay. Before this would even settle down, we have now the Russian war, which has worsened the situation. So now the Russian and Ukraine war. So this is likely to continue. But in terms of how we, the consumers, respond, we go back to the basics.
Okay.
Because the basics will be that in terms of my priorities, if I'm a consumer, is survival.
Okay.
So you may find that building for the future may not be the immediate issue. If prices are moving so forward, it may be foodstuffs where you need to shift to. Now for Uganda, we're a bit lucky in terms of foodstuffs because we grow on food. We don't depend on what is happening globally. So the price increase in the foodstuffs may still be a little bit better, other than the wheat with the ones that we import. But the ones that come from Uganda and within the region we are likely to be much better. But that said, is that as we, the consumers, we figure out which one is more important and which one I should postpone, the likelihood that I'll postpone building a house or buying a land or something is way high. Okay. That's where the contractors suffer.
Okay.
Because where the contractors suffer now is that because for him as a contractor, his services, because of our prices, will increase generally. Okay. So now me as a consumer of these services, I may have to postpone some of those things.
Okay, now let me put it in this way. I will represent the rest of the Ugandans with this particular question. I am employed, just like any other person who is employed in one way or the other, and you are receiving not that much salary that can sustain you for, let's say, a livelihood, but then you want to set up a building. You have very limited amount of money with you, or a very limited budget with you. You want to build, maybe you want to build rentals, or you want to build yourself a retirement home or your house and avoid the renting scenario. So for a person who is actually having a limited budget, do they have a chance of constructing? And if they do have a chance of constructing, what are the key things they need to have? Or what are those, what should they do to get the construction done, regardless of how much money they've got? Because you will find out not everyone can just stand up and construct a house there and then.
I think the beauty of that question is I'm also part of the Ugandan you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
Because the decisions you are making, I must decide. That's why I told you go back to the basics.
Okay.
The starting question is there are two issues you must consider. One, are these prices here to stay? If the prices are here to stay a little longer, the prices are not going to reduce anytime soon.
True.
Then there's no around it. You must tighten the belt and you must build. Now, if you predict and realize that the prices actually are a short-term lived, just like I've told you, you need to go back to the basics to understand why these prices are moving this way. For me, I still believe it's because of the war, the supply side not responding quickly, and then the war. Meaning, when we all this sorts itself out, we will be able to the prices will be at, if not go back down, they'll stabilize. Because as an economic agent, I'm telling you now, as an economist, never take decisions when you cannot predict the future.
You need to first.
You need to know the future is going to be. Because if you are going to build a house, and by the time you complete building, you don't know the price at which you are going to sell. It's bad business. And that's with the prices shifting as quickly as they are shifting now. A person who decides to wait and see, you are better off.
To see how the prices are.
Until you're able to predict. Now, if you realize the prices are likely to stay high up there and they have stabilized, you take it.
But sometimes it's very difficult to predict the future.
True. True. That's why in macroeconomics management, the biggest issue that we try to sort out in macroeconomic management is price stability. And that's why if there's any message we should take out from what is occurring now, is now that because when people used to talk about, for instance, this government having attained that macroeconomic stability, people used to take it as a given. It's like something that should happen. But now people are starting to realize that for you to make economic decisions, you need to know and predict the future, and one of which is the price. And that's why currently the biggest problem worldwide is to ensure that we get that price stability back.
All right. And moving on, let's also try to look at there was a recent flooding in Durban, that is in South Africa, and some of the reasons behind it was poor infrastructure. And climate change was also highlighted. Climate change was the bigger point. But then poor infrastructure was also highlighted in one way or the other. And what is your opinion on this one? Do you believe poor infrastructure has a way it hits out the climate change?
True. Actually, both reasons are correct. Because I'll use an example of Netherlands. Netherlands is a very interesting country. It is below sea level. So you'd be expecting it to be flooding all the time. The whole country could flood. And it's on the sea, so you could expect the water to water. But because they were able to know their problem, they planned for it and built the right infrastructure to accommodate them in the predicament they have. So meaning the same way is that Durban, because they haven't, I don't blame them a lot, because they haven't had these floods, this type of floods for the last 400 years. So you can't blame them for not having planned the right infrastructure
for such situation.
But now that I've had this, I expect a tomorrow's Durban to be able to accommodate the type of flooding that will come in the future. Because then you start having what we refer to as climate smart infrastructure. So you're able to build with the infrastructure in mind. And that's for Uganda is where we planners are trying to push for. Because the same issue we are talking about affects Uganda. You realize that every time the rains come, most of our roads are swept away. Because we are not building this climate smart infrastructure. So for us from the planning angle, so we are pushing the conversation now to climate smart infrastructure to be able to know that for a country like Uganda, where you have 2 rainy seasons, you need to have infrastructure that resists that kind of rainy season.
Okay. Last year, we had cases of buildings collapsing in Kampala. Yeah. There was one of the famous businessman which collapsed in Kisenyi, and some of the key highlights there was the iron bars that were used for that particular arcade that was being constructed. Yeah. And people were wondering, was the challenge with the engineer, or let's say, was the challenge with the contractor or the owner of the building in some of those situations? Because I would want to understand, if the building collapses, where is the blame?
No, the blame is on the engineer.
Okay.
It falls down on the engineer straight away, because it's the engineer, you the owner of the building. You don't have that technical know-how to know that this type of
building needs
building material, okay. This type of steel, I'm using iron bars, is the quality I need. Okay. There are those with Y16, Y12, so you need to know which level and which type of strength do you require. So, and it's now this is only the engineers who have been taught to be able to tell this. So, and to the extent that the engineer advised the owner of the building, and the owner of the building heeded the instruction. It's a totally different thing. And if I'm the engineer, I'd rather resign and let somebody else take over.
Because you failed as an engineer.
Because if I fail to advise you, okay, so this is the right bar and you refuse to take it, then I'd rather resign than me to continue.
Okay. Yeah. Let's now generally take a look at this. As the Director, National Planning Authority here, we've seen the real estate sector growing bigger and bigger. For the last 10 years, I believe it is one of those sectors that is promising, because each other day that comes by, someone makes money, the investment is always real estate. So what have you done to see that we are improving? Because there is some improvement in our real estate sector. In the last 10 years, I will just generalize it to 10. I won't draw it to 5, but the last 10 years. But what other things do you think should be done to improve the sector?
Actually, for me, you posed a very interesting question, which is of concern to me. As a development planner, it actually concerns me that for everybody who is getting money, they invest in real sector. Okay. Because for me, it's bad business. We are not doing it's not the right thing to do. Okay. Because it's one of the problems why we are not growing as fast as we want, and we are not creating jobs fast enough. Okay. Because real estate is, to the large extent, is dead capital. We are getting our capital and tying it into something that's not creating jobs fast enough. Okay. And that's why you are having a lot of unemployment. So if I was to turn the conversation, and from the development planning angle, actually the conversation we are having is how do we ensure people who are putting too much money in real estate start setting up factories.
Okay, instead of putting a lot of money into the real estate.
Let them set up factories. Why should every Ugandan be staying in his own house? And you are making the whole of Kampala mushroom towards, why shouldn't we be putting up high-rise houses whereby, okay, by the way, it's way cheaper to rent over time, because the building I stay in at, for instance, in my home, I may die before it ever repaying me back the amount of maybe even my kids. True. And by that time it may even be out of shape and what, but the same amount of money probably could have put up a mini small factory that is able to create jobs, but more importantly, make more money. But that said, to respond to my question, there are a few challenges with the construction sector that we see. For me, if I go to first and foremost, the biggest challenge is that of because we have all of us gone into, everybody thinks we need to build what, we are losing out on physical plan or the ones of what. But for government,